This episode of The Coach's Box, Legends of the Game, Volume 3, has been brought to you by located at the intersection of 23 and Bittersweet in Granger, Indiana. Dean's Barbecue and Restaurant serves a wide variety of foods made from scratch daily. For more information, check out their Facebook and visit their website, www.deansgranger.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Regional Radio Sports Network. We're broadcasting live and in living color from Beef O'Brady's, State Road 23. I'm Paul Condry, along with Coach Ron Hecklinski. And welcome to Legends Edition number 3. Heck, we have got a great one tonight. Two of the guys who have probably changed the mindsets of basketball here in northern Indiana. And let me tell you this, Heck, 2,146 games at the college level that they've coached at. They have a combined 1,582 wins, 564 losses. Coach Mike Lightfoot across the table from me, who I've been blessed to work with for well over 2 decades. 794 wins. And, of course, Coach Kessler to my immediate right. How about 788 wins? And we can talk about Coaches of the Year. We can talk about Mike's just recently been notified that he's going to be going to the Indiana Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well-deserved. Yeah, wasn't a very good football player.
No. And, of course, both in the NAI Hall of Fame. We could talk, and I'll have Andrew on our video portion of this program, a list of all of their accolades. But we're here to talk about some of the stuff. Two of the most influential people, and I know you as a former college athlete as well as a high school athlete, as well as a very successful high school coach. You can speak to the fact that how these guys change things. I would say this, and finally before I throw it to you, two guys who have impacted the world for Jesus Christ, two guys who have impacted the lives of countless amount of kids. So big rewards in heaven, boys.
Yeah, so I think that, a lot of rewards in heaven, but a lot of rewards on the hardwood, man. I mean, I grew up playing against Coach Kessler's teams. I grew up playing with Mike Lightfoot.
Yeah.
And I know both of these guys. It's great. We're shaking hands. We're doing all this. But when the ball went up, man, it was 100% coaching your brains out, and wonderful guys, wonderful people. That's all you're going to hear from me because I want to listen to all the stories, the countless stories here tonight.
That's what we're going to do. Coach Mike Lightfoot, just earlier in the week, you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. And for a kid who grew up in LaVille, went to LaVille High School, and, of course, then went off to Bethel, and, of course, had an amazing career there. What's your take on the first news? I remember distinctly when I got the call about going into the Indiana Football Hall of Fame, and I thought to myself, wow, a kid from Hobart, Indiana, that makes sense. But me, I was the worst football player of all time. But what's your take on your news?
Well, it's just growing up in Indiana, how much that you grow up, watching all these great players play your whole time. You're in the backyard. You're shoveling the snow off and going out and shooting, and you're doing all those things. And being from this area and representing the northern part of the state, it is really an honor because I think of the other opportunities I've had. This is probably the most special one because growing up here, coaching here, being a part of this my whole life is pretty special.
And I think back on Coach K wins the first NAIA national championship in 1992. And subsequently, then the Crossroads League back, and then it was the Mid-Central Conference. But Coach K kind of laid the groundwork on how great that league was going to be.
Yep.
And Coach K, you remember that first national championship?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. That was a real thrill to go down to Texas and play that one. I do remember getting on the plane, coming home and got the trophy there, and I'm thinking, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have the trophy.
Yeah.
What do we do now? And so you just have to go ahead and try to continue to be good at what you do. And really, that's a result of players. Come on, let's be serious.
Yeah.
You got good players. try not to mess them up, let them play. I had some great players in that team and did what they needed to do. Great guys to work with.
But that's the other part of your jobs, though, recruiting and going out and finding those players and finding the players that will play not only in your system but play with your beliefs and your belief system. And that's the second part of college coaching.
Yeah.
And it's probably the hardest part. I mean, really. I mean, isn't it? I mean, speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think I spent more time with Jim on Friday night watching a kid play. We're both recruiting, and probably my wife's kids. Where every Friday night we're trying to pretty much recruit the same players. So, yeah, but you're right. You've got to find the right fit, especially at a Christian college, and fits your program, fits what you want to accomplish. You just don't want to throw mud at the wall. You got to find the right kids, and so we're constantly looking at the same kids that grew up in this area.
Coach K, when you're thinking about recruiting student athlete A over here, and Mike's recruiting student athlete A, Paul Patterson's recruiting that kid, John Grimes is recruiting that, Steve Platt's recruiting this guy, and I mean, you're thinking about legends of the game and that collective group right there, just those guys off the top of our head. I mean, then you got to go compete against the guy for 4 more years, and then you think, and then of course you at the end of every game you want to have that customary handshake, saying you really should have came here, or that's what you get. We beat your butt, or whatever the case may be. So what a neat opportunity to be able to coach in a league with those kind of guys.
You're right, and you're talking about our championship team. We had a big guy nobody wanted. It was David James. He was the MVP of the tournament. I found him in Chicago. Played at Chicago. Bloom got cut. Didn't play. He was working at Dunkin' Donut loading skids. Now he's 6'9" now. And I went to watch him play at the Plex up there. They didn't pass him the ball. And so I think, what am I doing? I watch him out there. I said, David, can you dunk this? He goes, yeah. He goes, kabam! I thought, oh, okay, well, let's work on that one a little bit. So sure enough, he shows up, and, he was like a unfound guy. This is kind of off the topic. You want a funny story, but we were playing Huntington, and it was Dave's senior year, and I came in, added the three-point shot. I came in practice, and Dave is shooting threes. So I said, David, forget it. I'm going to break your arm if you shoot in the game. Kind of halfway kidding. So and he said, well, can I shoot? I said, okay, one time, Dave, that's it. So we're playing Huntington. We're beating them really bad. It's into the game. Dave is out. I'm just letting those guys sit. Now he comes and sits beside me. He says, Coach, you said I could shoot. So I put him in. He makes a bank three.
Oh, boy.
At the end of the game, Coach was standing, he's glaring at me like that. I had to tell you, hey, I'm sorry. I thought he would embarrass himself, but what do you know? So David graduates shooting 1,000% from three.
You can't beat that.
No. Anyway.
That's it. That's the stories we're going to share tonight. Stick around. More things
Dave.
coming here from Beef O'Brady's. We'll be back right after this short timeout on Regional Radio Sports. Thanks for joining us here on Regional Radio Sports. Paul Condry along with Coach Ron Hecklinski. We welcome you. The Legends Program, edition number 3. Jim Kessler to my right, across the table, Mike Lightfoot. Mike, of course, at Bethel College, and, of course, Coach K at Grace College for many, many years. Tremendously successful. And as I mentioned prior to our last segment, 2,146 games these guys have coached and have had a tremendous career. We were talking about recruiting in the last break, and Mike, I want to start this one with you. Recruiting, one of the most unique guys that you recruited was this football player from Bloomington South High School, who had a pretty good athletic career, comes to Bethel, and all of a sudden, kind of gets banged up a little bit in that freshman year and just learns the game. And the next thing you know, he's in the NAI Hall of Fame.
Yes.
It may have the most decorated career, maybe with the exception of Rico Swanson,
probably,
that ever played for you. And let's talk about finding those diamonds in the roughs.
Yeah, I remember when he came as a freshman, we had some people come up there and said, why did you bring in this big clodder hopper? He's got 2 left feet. He doesn't know what he's doing. And he, without a doubt, between his freshman year and his sophomore year, he improved more than any player that I've ever coached, because he went from kind of playing 5 or 6 minutes his freshman year out in the national tournament. He really blossomed, came off the bench, and then All-American sophomore, junior, senior year. So, he played in 4 national championship games in his career. So not too many people can say they did that.
Coach Kessler, did you have one of those diamonds in the roughs that you can think back on?
I got to go back on Eric Brain. He actually visited Bethel. He
really?
visited Grace first.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
and he told Joe Graham, I don't even think I'm going to go visit. I'm going to come here. So he goes to Bethel. What, you guys sold him? I don't know.
There we go. Yeah.
And I called him and says, well, I've decided to go to Bethel. I'm going to study youth ministries. So I don't know what he ended up studying, but you're right. He really developed over a period of time.
Sure did.
That was a great disappointment. Congratulations.
Well, thanks.
So what was you guys made a living with the Moore boys, did you not?
Yeah. I convinced them they'd be better together than apart. And that turned out to be true. And the very first day of practice, I tossed them both because they got in a fight. And I said, what do you guys do? We're not going to hurt each other. So, well, you fooled me. Now get out.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that again. And to this day, they still get after each other sometimes. And Marcus was the scorer. Scotty would yell at his brother all the time. I mean, just he was.
Is that a preview of coming attractions as a coach?
Critic, but we ran this old push down. Everybody in Indiana runs push down. They knew he would pass before Marcus cut. I knew he did that because in Bahamas he fell down. He'd already passed it, so I knew they did that just instinctively. But I thought, they competed before they were born.
Yeah.
They were in there banging around.
Right.
When they were 6th graders, their dad would let them play against each other in one-on-one and again because they always got in a fight over something. But what a hoot. Those two were great. Scotty, game's over. He'd be over working the crowd, shaking everybody's hand. Marcus would be sitting there they're twins, but they're, what do they call them? They reverse. One's right, one's left-handed. They're just mirror twins of each other. They were in a study at IU to study their uniqueness, and they're just totally different people. Look alike, but totally different.
They played for Chris Benedict at Columbia City, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a good
Played in the state championship game, right?
They did. They were at the
Hall of Fame Classic.
Hall of Fame Classic. Yeah, they played in that, and they lost in a real close one there. They had a rematch. And Odin blocked Scheckler's first shot, and the game was over. Because they all went south with that happening. There was good guys. Marcus is unusual. He would be eating a hot dog before the game in the locker room. He would get sick if he didn't. And sometime, more than once, they'd announce a lineup and Marcus not there. And they said, where is it? He's down there throwing up. It's the craziest thing. Played at Judson. He had this big red pop. He barfs it from the free throw line all the way to half court. They got to stop the whole game. And he's not sick. That's just a nervous thing with him.
Sports nutrition, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right out the window,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, back in the day, there was no sports nutrition.
No, there wasn't anything. Yeah.
Hot dog, popcorn.
We didn't think about that. We didn't think about any of that.
At his wedding, he's standing up there, and I hear Scott say, "Don't do it. Don't do it, Marcus. Don't do it." He was getting nervous, and he was going to throw up. And Scott saying, I hear him say, "Don't do it. Don't do it, Marcus. Don't do it." He didn't, but what a riot.
Taking a look at where this game of college basketball, and we were talking about this before the show, about the shot clock coming in and where the game has gone. Let me start with you, Coach K, about this. Do you feel college basketball, let's say specifically the NEI, since you guys spent your time here. I know, Mike, you're doing some commentating now at the NCAA Division I level. But do you think college basketball is in a good place right now, or do you think we're missing the boat on a couple things? What's your take?
Well, I'm an old-timer, I guess, and I'm not enthralled with NBA basketball for the lack of passing. Now they can, and they're terribly skilled, but I like a little more – maybe I just can't see what they're doing. I know they run all kinds of sets, but I can't figure them out. If they do, they break down quickly, and somebody goes one-on-one. And I just prefer to see a little more structure. So it goes and comes. Nobody was going to play big guys. All of a sudden, Purdue is playing big guys. And so now we're going to get some big guys like Purdue so we can compete. Well, the game goes and comes. And, there was a time when I coached, nobody played zone. Then everybody played zone. Now everybody, it's man-to-man. Nobody switched. That was terrible. Now everybody switches all the time. So the game just changes, and you have to be flexible enough to buy in and believe what you believe and sell it to your team and get them to buy it and go. Some don't play pressure. Some play pack line. I always like pressure. But
Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think at the NAI level, I really like the game because it's more pure. But I'll be honest with you, in our ministry, it's a mess. You have three things that's going to have post-COVID, so you have a whole thing there. Probably the mental health of our student athletes at the Division I level is the worst it's ever been. Yeah. And so, we're dealing with that. And probably mental health of our coaches are the worst. And then you add on that NIL, and now you've got that mess where players are making more than some of the coaches, and the dynamics of this guy making more than that person and all the other stuff. And you got all these agents and people involved in it. So when you look at the money that's involved in all these things, it's a really difficult position. I think the older coaches, we're going to see a mass exodus of them. We saw some last year. We're going to see more of them because they're like, I can't chase these kids around. I get on a kid at practice, he's going to transfer to so-and-so the next day, and they can. So I think those are the issues that you have to manage players. You cannot coach them hard. Well, not all of them can do it. I mean, you have a few, but you just see the rank and file. You got to manage, and that's just the way it's going to be at the Final Four. NABC president said, guys, the game is now a player's game, not a coach's game. In the 70s, 80s, it was all about the coach. Bobby Knight, Gene Cady, all these people. Now it's about the players have control. And so that's different at the small college level.
So when you hear the word transfer portal, it's just, it just throws a whole wrench into the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, Ryan was talking to me the other day. He said, Dad, the people in our league, the Graces, the Bethels, the Indiana Westlands, you guys would have been poached. You would not have been able to keep your best players. They would have gone. They would have been poached. They would have been taken away. Right now at Morehead State, Olivet Nazarenes, one of their best players is at Morehead State playing, and you're seeing more and more of the NAI. And Indiana State's coach has just done a great job of bringing in all-American Division II players rather than getting Division I players who think that they've arrived or people owe it to them to play. He's getting great Division II players and NAI players to play for him, and they've had success going that route. So, yeah, it's a different era for college basketball.
When you look at it from that standpoint, do you say then that the high school kids that used to be recruited, those kids are really caught up in really falling by the wayside, right?
Yeah, the ones that were always thinking, I'm going to get a small Division I offer, that's not happening. If a mid-major has a decision on an 18-year-old kid or a 21-year-old kid that's being around the block, well, they're going to go with the kid that's been around the block.
COVID's affected that too.
Yeah.
He's got that extra year, and so
guys
are sitting tight and moving. And you think you can have a 20-game season, you got a couple good players coming back, and they're gone. You'll have a 10-game winning season, and you're fired.
Yep.
That's got to be really frustrating. Both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a couple teams this year with transfers. It takes a while. We say they gel. Well, that just means they get to understand each other. But you bring guys from Portland State and other places, you add them to your team. How do you fit them together to play? It takes a while for that to happen. So you think you're going to get better. Sometimes you don't because they don't fit.
The chemistry.
Guys get knocked out of my spot.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy into that. And
trying to, but
a lot of them have 8, 9, 10 new players.
Yep.
Do you guys anticipate that the NIL scenario will eventually filter down to NAIA basketball? What's your guys' take?
There already has.
Yeah.
Oh, there's NIL money in NAIA basketball, and there's 3 states in the country that have NIL money for high school kids. So it's not going to stop. The haves, as Matt Painter has shared with me many times, that Mike, what has happened is the mid-majors are now the minor leagues. And he said, coming and understanding coaching at the mid-majors before Purdue, you don't have those great stories where you say, man, did you just see what the mid-majors have done with these kids? They're gone. they're gone the next year. They're not going to be a 4-year mid-major that's going to continue to play at Murray State.
So we're never going to see those Cinderella stories in the NCAA tournament series again. Well, is that what you're thinking?
They may go sit on the bench there anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
They may not be happy as they think they're going to be. I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be some of the reverse, though, too, because maybe some of the kids that are sitting on the bench at the high D1s and aren't playing, they may filter down to some of the mid-majors.
And they have.
And so it does work both ways sometimes.
It does. And those things, again, that's where you're going to have to get the right chemistry of the right guys. A lot of times people transfer for the wrong reason, and maybe their ego or, it's more about them. Those are the things that a coach now has to deal with that 3 years ago he didn't have to deal with all. It was his team. Now he's bringing in a bunch of strangers and trying to bring it together to win.
Well, you can take a look at Notre Dame now. Blake Wesley, plays 1 year.
Yep.
He's a good high school player. Blake Wesley wasn't the top player in the state of Indiana.
Nope.
So he plays 1 year at Notre Dame, and he's okay.
Yeah.
He's a nice player.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying he's a first-round draft pick. Are you?
They did.
Yeah.
And the money did.
Yeah. And J.J. Starling now too, right? There's that talk too.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be continually a talk. And, what we're finding out now, and the NCAA is looking at, probably in the next 5 years, they're going to look at this whole portal thing. Because the only way we're going to get rid of the portal or change the portal is if the academics, if these people that are transferred, I don't know about when kids transfer, not everything transfers. And so when kids start transferring from lots of schools, 3 different schools, what will it do with the graduation rates? And so the NCAA has to look at that here in about 5 years and say, whoa, what is that doing? So that's a big challenge for the future.
Mike Lightfoot, Jim Kessler, Ron Hecklinski, I'm Paul Condry. We come back after the timeout. These two guys competed a whole bunch of games against each other. We're going to ask them to dig into those memory banks and share some of those great Grace Bethel stories. We'll be back with more right after this at Beep Over 80s. Looking back here on Regional Radio Sports, I'm Paul Condry along with Coach Ron Hecklinski. Great to have Hall of Famer Mike Lightfoot, Hall of Famer Jim Kessler with us here today. Coach K was the fixture at Grace for 40-some-odd seasons.
42 as a head coach, 44 altogether. Yeah.
Mike, likewise, 3+ decades at Bethel. These guys, I've said this, I've been in the Crossroads League now for a couple decades and some change. My favorite college basketball game has always been Grace and Bethel, and I think I probably mentioned to both of these guys during our interviews. People talk about Duke and North Carolina, IU, Purdue, and they're special. I'm not arguing that aspect of it, but at the small college basketball level, what these guys put on the floor each and every night out, whether it be Tuesday nights, Saturday nights, and maybe even into some postseason scenarios, is always a special game for me to broadcast. Still is. Scott and Steve are doing that now, and we're looking forward to seeing those two teams play. But Coach Mike, whoever wants to jump on this first, you guys competed against each other. Did it get to the point where, Mike, let me start with you. Did you just know everything that Jim was going to be doing in advance of what he was doing because you coached against him so many times? And do you have a favorite Jim Kessler moment?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't think that because I think that if you go back, Jim had tendencies of what he was going to do, but he reinvented himself often on what he was going to do offensively or even some things defensively. More offensively, he would change things up. So, you couldn't stay the same in the league and be predictable, because if you're going to be predictable, you're not going to win. So you had to constantly change things. I was trying to run through my mind some games, but there was one when Scott Bloom hit a overtime win at our place in Goodman. I don't remember. That kind of still haunts me, because I remember telling the player during timeout, I said, just don't let Bloom get the ball. I don't care what else. Don't let Bloom get the ball. And he got it on the right baseline, pulled up, and got a buzzer beater. So I've never talked to my players since. I told him, I told you, don't let Bloom get the ball. But, you talked about the rivalry. I think that makes the rivalry, one, it's close. But I think the best part of it that the schools recruited a lot of the same guys. A lot of guys competed against each other in high school or AAU, and that made. And then the dynamics of many of the kids that were in the college also were from the local area, a lot of them. And so that made that they grew up knowing, maybe even if they didn't decide if they're going to Bethel or Grace, they knew about the programs in the school. And so I think that made it kind of unique too. But probably the best thing, the players knew each other.
Jim, what do you think?
It's like playing your brother. You know, they knew each other well, and Mike and I knew each other well. The schools knew each other, and you battle, but then it's over. You know, you might walk off ticked at the time, but it doesn't stay there because you have respect for each other and the schools and what the schools are about. And a lot of the players played against each other in high school. They knew each other well. They played each other in the summer.
Yeah, with each other. Yeah,
they knew each other well. So
how many times did you guys have campers go to the Lancer basketball camps, ends up at Bethel. A Bethel kid's going to Mike's camps, ends up at Grace. How many times did you have that?
I think both schools, if you wore a Grace camp shirt to a Bethel camp, the players had them do push-ups at every station. And I think from what I heard, that was the same. Yeah. That was the same the other way around. Oh, yeah. And a lot of times you would be crushed because somebody you had at your camp for, 7 years all of a sudden goes to Grace. And, I know likewise that happened our way too.
The ministry that you guys have had has, and Mike, you're still actively involved with the Nation of Coaches. Mm-hmm. But the ministry that you had, I know, Mike, you've always told me that if you weren't going to be a basketball coach, you would have been a pastor. Mm-hmm. And you really have that pastoral spirit, and you always have. And I know, Coach K, you've been actively involved in mission trips all across the globe, and you both have been. So can we speak to the aspect of something that I've talked about a lot is blooming where God planted you? Coach K, let's start with you. You played at Grace. You're up there, and this has been your thing. And so you have bloomed where God's planted. Can you talk about the mission that you felt called to at Grace College?
It began with Coach Kammer. He was there. He's with the Heat now. But then I was drafted in the Army, and I spent 2 years getting my grad work, coaching high school a couple of years, and the coach hired me to come back. And then the turkey left. He went to Westmont and shanghaied me there. So I ended up in a couple of years being head coach, and I think we've always had that passion to what's the school about, and our school is to know Christ and to make him known, and so that has to permeate everything you should do. Your college should reflect the flavor of your team, whatever character should reflect what the college is about. I think so. We try to recruit young men that fit what the college is about. And so that made that kind of thing easier. And we did, I think it was 18 trips or something, other countries, whatever. It's always in the context of missions. And, I liked MKs. We go to the schools because missionary kids don't choose to be missionaries, but they are. And so one of the things they miss is being able to be a part of sports programs in their home country. So we tried to create a camp environment for them, and it was really fun and challenging to do that. And Lord blessed that in lots of ways. It's MK's play for me. Yeah. It's kind of neat.
Mike, I mean, you don't recruit all Christian kids.
No.
So, but you still have it's a prime opportunity for you to impact kids who really don't have a faith component in their life. And so you guys have done
the bottom line is, though, that they had to know going in, okay, here's the standards, here's the expectations. Oh, you will have chapel 3 days a week. Oh, you will be a part of a Bible study. You will have these things. Now, if you don't feel comfortable, we need to make sure that this isn't going to be a place for you, because you're not going to be a happy camper in the first month or first semester. So, and I think we looked at it as a staff and as an institution that became a mission field in itself, where we could, the Jody Martinez's of the world that, made a commitment to Christ, and you see those things happen over and over and over, and both of us have seen where our players have grown closer to Christ and made a commitment to him, or maybe after they graduated 3 years later, they come to Christ. It's just you go bloom where you're planted, and that's where we would take kids spiritually.
So I played for Claude Wolf at Manchester.
I knew Claude.
And
Pastor
Claude. Coach Wolf was a brethren minister.
Yep.
And in practice, I would make the same mistake 100 times over, and he would tell the assistant coach, Carl Merritt, he'd say, Carl, take Ron over there and run him until he throws up in the trash can there. And, so one day I said, Coach, listen, man. I said, throw something at me. I said, use some bad language at me. But I don't know if God really thinks you making me run and throwing up is such a great thing either, Coach. Come on. But so that atmosphere that I had with Coach Wolf was amazing to me. And to be able to go inside the lines and fight and scratch and claw and try and win. And then outside of the lines, you have your leader, your coach, the guy that you look up to, talking about Jesus Christ every day. And I thought it doesn't get any better than that.
You know, one of the things I think as a parent, we're all parents, that you always are a parent. You always will be a parent. And for Coach K and I, you're always going to be a coach. You're always going to be a coach. So, you know, when you pick up the phone, it's going to be, hey, Coach, this is what I'm thinking about. Hey, Coach, this is going on. Hey, Coach, I got this happening in my life. So you're always their coach as long as they're alive, as long as you're alive. So I guess that gives a great responsibility that we all have. You know, they call me coach. They call me coach because of the investment that you had in their life and the investment that they've had in your life.
That's one of the joys. I think I look back. You're talking about a trophy. One of my trophies is Delano Robinson. He's an inner city kid from Chicago. He's a pastor in Cincinnati. He's the trophy.
Yeah.
Trophy's in the trophy case.
Yeah.
They're going to dump him someday.
Yep.
and that's your real ministry joys that bring lasting joy. Wins and losses, whatever.
Yeah. I'm going to change gears here now, and I'm going to pick on Mike here. Some of my favorite moments of doing broadcasting, there was a stretch where I was riding on the bus with Mike and his guys, and I'll never forget this. It was a road game at Spring Arbor. And the pilot
snowed, didn't it?
No.
Yeah.
It snows every time we go.
I didn't leave him. I left Ryan Binkley underneath the bus one time at Spring Arbor. He went to give me a Diet Coke and it was rolled back under that. You know, he got it and the door shut. Boom. And so we're going down the road.
He's
inside underneath it. It's like 20 degrees in there.
Oh, that's fine.
And he thank goodness he had his phone. He called Ryan and he said, "Coach, I'm underneath the bus."
But we're on the road, and the pilots lay an egg at Spring Arbor. And I'll never forget Donnie Smith, who had just started work with me. Donnie's now at Southeastern University. And Mike and Rico was there. And I remember Mike had everybody sit 2 by 2 by 2 at the front of the bus. And he's going to watch. We're going to watch film. And keep in mind, there's like 12 pizzas. He says, send the pizzas back to the back of the bus. So John Natale and me and Donnie Smith, we're having a time having the pizzas. And Mike and Tony are up at the front of the bus. And he is just going right at them all the time. So you get the film and watching the film on the bus. And I know there were times back when Mike, so I've been told, even a decade earlier, they would come back to practice. They would come back to Bethel, and then they would practice.
Yeah.
And which was but Mike kind of let him off the hook on this one. But I'll never forget some of those favorites. My favorite stories was Mike chewing on his guys for 2.5 hours from Spring Arbor, Michigan. And, of course, now they haven't ate anything. So by the time that they get back to the Mishawaka campus, you know, Donnie and all of us, we've taken care of the pizzas. So do you have some favorite moments like that when you were coaching?
Yeah, I don't think there's any questions that you do, because you put so much into it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, basketball is basketball.
Right.
And we can say what we want to say, but we're basketball coaches,
right.
and that's what we do. We teach. And when your guys they lose it, they go haywire, they just don't do anything that you're telling them to do. There are those moments where, you know, a 2-hour session is needed, man.
Yeah.
And your voice escalates.
Yep.
You escalate.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, they're not going to come out and play like that again, or so you think.
Right. You hope not.
Those are legendary, and I'm sure you've had those. Those are legendary, and players will talk about those times forever. Every time I get together with players, it's always, hey, Coach, remember this, remember that? Hey, Coach, remember when you threw your sucker at the big screen TV and it stuck on the TV? And we couldn't laugh.
Nobody laughed.
And we couldn't laugh because we knew how mad you were. And those are the stories that get carried on. And, that's the great part of coaching, I think.
We were at Indiana Wesleyan one year, and We played really bad first half. This is before Greg Tonigo. We were normally just used to go in there and thump them good and go home. We didn't play well first half. I don't know what the score was. So I told my assistant, I said, I'm going in. I'm going to chew them out for a minute, and I'm out. And that's it. I'm just going to talk a minute. So I went in there, 1 minute. Said, that was the worst half of basketball, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I went to swing the door to get out of there, and it was locked. And I hit that and bounced off like a rubber ball. I think it lost the effect because I know those guys were laughing inside. They weren't looking outside, but they were. So that comes up, that story from time to time.
Do you get those, Coach K?
Oh, yeah. We played at Drury in Missouri, and we were down halftime pretty bad. And I pulled a Newt Rockney. It's a true story. I went in. I said, excuse me, ladies. I was looking for the men's room, and I left. And I hear Scott Blue. He gets up and he starts chewing on him. So I went and sat in the stands. Not even with that. I sat in the stands. They came out and they ended up knocking Drury off. It was a great win, and I didn't have a whole lot to do with that.
Right.
I just went and watched. But they decided to play.
Yep.
That was a great win for those guys down there. Some of those, actually, at your place, the year we won the championship there, we lost at your place by a few.
Yeah.
And I remember guys were in there, everybody's kind of down. I said, everybody look at me here. And I whispered, I said, you guys, if you will play like you can, we can win the national title. They just kind of looked at me like, you're crazy. So we got on the bus. We didn't eat. We went straight home with the vans. We practiced 4 things for 15 minutes each. Managers brought them all a Big Mac and whatever it was. It was Burger King, I think. And we went home. And they've talked that helped shape us.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're not happy, but that let them focus on the things that we really thought we needed to do anyway, and then it stuck. And so sometimes those can be game-changing experiences. I've always thought, even when you know you're going to have a good season, if you don't have those crisis points, you'll never be as good as you can be. So you I hope that happens. I hope we have a crisis here. Then we can develop. I'm sure you've seen that.
And it's never calculated. It's always the emotionalism that you have, and you're bringing it out, and you're carrying it over to your team. Yeah. I mean, I never really thought those things through, because if I would have thought those things through, I wouldn't have done some of that stupid stuff. But it was all effect, and those kids took it to heart, like I know your players did.
Coaches, I've learned and seen now hundreds of practices that. The big thing is, coaches coach concepts, but great teams, players coach players. And when you see players coaching players, either like a Scott Bloom, at halftime or during a game where, you got your point guard say, Coach, I got this. I know what we need to do here. That separates. And so when you get your players to be thinking as players and coaches say, okay, here's the concept, now you guys run with it, now you're going to be successful.
After the timeout, I'm going to throw a question to all 3 of you guys. You guys have had guys, just like Mike alluded to, guys who came into the game, a.k.a. like Damon Bailey did, I want the ball. I want the ball in my hands. Just follow me, boys. Each one of you guys have had a half a dozen of those kids who have come in your program that have made the difference. I want you to share some of those names with me when we come out of the break. We're here live at Beef O'Brady's. We'll return with more of the Coach's Box after this short timeout. Thanks for joining us here on Regional Radio Sports. I'm Paul Condry, along with Coach Ron Hecklinski, the legendary Jim Kessler, and, of course, Mike Lightfoot, the head coach at Bethel College for many, many years, which is now Bethel University. All right, guys, we talked about some of the top players who were instinctively wanted the ball in their hands when the game is on the line. Absolute game changers. You've all had a handful of them. Heck, let's start with you. I know you. Now, I don't want you to give me any of those guys who played on that McDonald's All-Star team. We got to talk about your high schoolers.
I got you. All right, we're playing DeMatha. So we're playing DeMatha down in Washington, D.C. Morgan Wooden had a liver transplant about a month before I did. And we decide we're going to play this game, and all the money is going to go towards organ donation awareness. And I said, yeah, this is great, man. We had to go through the IHSA to get clearance to do it. That was a mess, but we finally got that done. And so I'm watching them on film, preparing and all that stuff. And watching film is cool, but once you see them live, so I walk on the court now, and they're doing warm-ups. And there's Keith Bogans, there's Joe Forte, there's Andre Scott, there's Andre Collins, 6'9", 6'10". And the first thing I say to myself is, what did I get us into, man? I mean, I'm looking at these guys, and these guys are NBA guys. And there's a little room right off the court where the press goes. And I got in there, and I was about ready to throw up. I grab a Sprite, and I settle myself down. And then I take my guys in for the final prayer and go over matchups and all that stuff. And Eric Bush puts his hand up. He said, "Coach, can I say something?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Coach, you don't think we can win this game, do you?" And I said, and I get emotional when I talk about this. I said, "Yeah, I think we can win." He said, "I can hear it in your voice. You don't think we can win this game." And I'm going to tell you right now, Coach, we're going to win this game. And I got like tears in my eyes, and I'm trying to be tough and all this stuff still. We go out there, and Eric Bush and those guys just, they take Keith Bogans, they take Forte, and they beat them. And Eric Bush sets the tone in that meeting. Wow. And it's amazing how players can sense what their coach is like, how he is on that pregame talk. And then the other one was Dejavon Sawyer-Davis, who you guys know.
Yeah.
I mean, Dejavon didn't say 2 words, but when he said 1 word, everybody knew that you better pick your stuff up.
Coach K, who were some of the guys?
I think it's always the player that the team wants to have it, not just me. And Bruce Grimm could do that. But Bruce could make things happen, but he would find other people too. And so they move with him. Scott Bloom was really good at creating, getting to the hoop, getting at the line, and again, players would move when those guys do that. So those two that come to mind. Big guys have to be recipients, so they do their thing, but it has to be the result of somebody getting the ball at the right time. So those are 2 guys that come to mind.
Coach Lightfoot, what do you think?
Great players.
Well, I can think a lot of doubles. 11, Rico Swanson.
Yeah.
I think he had, the ball in his hand, won some national championship games. And then I can think of 33.
Will Walker.
Will Walker. He got the ball, and we just said go get it and then clear out and let him go. And 55, Eric Brand. Those 3 were just unbelievable. I just was blessed with so many guys that over the years could just win you a game. Edison, Bales, Ryan. I mean, they just found ways.
Number 5 was pretty good.
Yeah, they just found ways to win. You go in, and even Caleb Ogen's last year. Clay Yo. I mean, Caleb Ogen, my last year, I'd go in before the game. I'd look at Caleb, and I thought, we're not going to lose. I don't have to do anything tonight. And that's when you have a great leader, because they're just going to find a way to win. You just get on the bus with them and enjoy the ride. Sometimes
those guys do that at the defensive end too. I specifically remember we're playing you at our place, Rico. You always have to know where he is, and so I sent my point guard to the corner. I said, "Go down there and stand." Rico still stole the ball, and we didn't even throw it to his man, and he scores at the other end. He was to make a play.
Yeah.
Some guys just have that awareness.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's at the defensive end, too. It's
Yeah.
not just at the offensive end.
Right.
But
Let me ask you guys this question. You both went to the schools you coached at. You went to Grace,
Yeah.
you went to Bethel, and you had a certain affinity for your schools, and then you became head coaches there and were very, very successful. Did either one of you have an opportunity to leave and take maybe what someone would have called a better job, or were you just cemented into the school because that's what you loved?
yes, but I chose to stay. Part was my family. Part of it was I just felt God had called me to this institution, and so as long as he kept me there, I stayed. And I've never regretted that.
Yeah, same thing. Probably the closest one was the year Scott Drew left Baylor, and Valpo had already offered Ryan after his freshman year. They'd offered him, and so Ryan didn't had not committed to Valpo, but then I had the opportunity. If I went to Valpo, then Ryan Wood went there, and then we went that route. And so that was the closest, because it would have left me close to home, and it would have kept me, faith-based with Lutheran school. At least gave me, some of that. And Coach Drew was still going to be around the campus, and so that was the one. But yeah, the same thing. It just felt like, wait a minute, I had to go ahead. Why do I do what I do? Where's my why? I felt comfortable where I'm at. And I'm happy. I think God protected me from myself if I would have got caught up into the D1 rat race, because you get in there, you want to win, and so you're gonna pour everything you into that, and you're gonna try to figure out a way to win. That's going to take casualties on everything else: your marriage, your family, yourself physically. And so I'm really happy that God protected me from making that choice.
That's a great way to say it, to be honest with you.
All right, family is a big part of what you guys have been able to do. Your wives have been just stalwarts in your career. I know Coach Gay, your wife, is here today. Jackie's been with you. She's still actively involved in your ministry with Nation of Coaches, Mike. And let's talk about, and of course, you guys raise your kids in and around this, the game of basketball and around the institutions. And let's start with you, Mike, and just talk about the importance. And, of course, for years, your mom and your dad.
Yeah.
I remember being there
Yep.
With your mom up there. I could still hear her up there where I was sitting down below, and your dad. Okay,
Yeah.
right. So let's just talk about the family aspect and how it played into this.
And that's kind of one of the major reasons why I stayed where I was, because the family was going to be a part of it, and my sons didn't have to be shipped off to babysitters or whatever. They had grandparents on both sides that were going to be able to take them, and with the coaching demands that you have and the time away and all that, it takes a village. At least I think in our case, it took a village of my family and Jackie's family to pour it in. And you're right, coaches' wives put up with so much more, and that's why Jackie's been so valuable in the coaches' wives ministries, because she's walked into her shoes. So when she's in that fraternity, and so she can pour into these young coaches' wives, they're saying, man, we've been to 5 jobs in 6 years. I'm about ready to throw in the towel. And so she was always my best assistant coach in that area. But, yeah, family is very important to us. We grew up on the court. But I think that the advice that I always tell coaches today is do not keep your family away. Your players need to see that you're a dad first, you're a husband first, because 80% of Division I basketball players don't have a father in the home. So you become the father, and it's very important that you model that, because they don't know what that's like, and you model what it's like to be a husband, because they've never experienced that. So it was a blessing for me, because my players then got to be modeled. They got to see all these great players and what it took to be a basketball player, and they reflected on that. That became their mantle, because they saw the Michael Edisons of the world and Ryan Bell, Rico. It was part of their lives just as much as ours.
Jim, what's your thoughts on family?
That's very important to me. And we have 4 daughters, and they're all pleased with who they've married and their families, now grandkids. But Suzanne and I were married when I was playing in college, so she kind of knew what she was getting into. And so it's been a good thing. I think she would attest to that. She's always been a stay-at-home mom until the kids were older, and being able to be involved in my ministry and giving me the freedom to travel some too, which was good. Hold down the fort, and I really love her dearly, and I appreciate what she's meant to me and the teams through the years in our family. She's grandma.
Yeah.
Big time.
You got to take care of the home court. If a coach does not take care of their home, we always talk about home court advantage. If they don't take care of their home court, there's going to be, that's the thing that I see now that's glaring now, is most Division I coaches have been through 2 or 3 marriages. And so they're very lonely. They might have a lot of money and then be on national TV, but they're hurting and they're lonely, and there's consequences for the price they paid to get where they're at. And that's people don't realize or see that side. And so, I remember Coach Drew, when he left LSU to come to Bethel, he said, I needed to get out of that rat race because I was never home. And that's the life of a coach.
I just made Sunday. I didn't do basketball on Sunday. Very, very rarely. That was church day and family day. And just was sacred.
Yeah.
And our girls never cried when they were little when they heard noises because they grew up in the crib, and going to games. Some of them liked basketball, some of them didn't. One of them, the big thing was to go into the bleachers after the game, look for combs and things people dropped. That was her thing.
Yeah.
But it's been really neat. They're loyal fans. Let me tell you, I've had to pull them out of officials' rooms before.
Yeah.
Girls, that's not what you do. So.
Yeah.
Final thought for all three of you guys. Start with you, Coach Heck. You had to have one or two coaches along the way that made an impact on you, not only as a man, but as a coach. Now, we've only got about 5 minutes left here on our program. Who were the couple of guys for Ron Hecklinski?
Yeah, probably my dad, because my dad was my junior high coach, in the Catholic leagues, and then Coach Wolf and Bob Donowell. Bob Donowell was my high school coach, and he was great. And then to see the side of Coach Wolf, that it wasn't always only basketball. I mean, there was another part of life, and he instilled that in me. So probably those three people.
Coach Kessler, who were some of the most important coaches in your life?
My father didn't coach me, but he did. And Coach Cameron was my coach there at Grace, and had a huge impact on my life. Still does. I talk with him regularly. Those two guys. And then I had an assistant coach, Ivan Schuler. I learned a lot from the shoe. You don't always have to be the head coach. You learn from lots of people. My assistant, he was more veteran than I. I learned a great deal from Ivan.
Mike, how about you?
Well, I think we all agree. I think my dad had a major. He's probably the best athlete of the bunch over the years. He was going to be a Dodger. And there was a thing called World War II. So, but if I think about that, I think about my high school coach. I was blessed to a guy that played in the Big Ten with Rick Mount, Steve Longfellow. And here I had opportunity to be on his first team. And so that was a blessing. And then going into college, Tom Firestone, and then the guy that I talk to often is still Homer Drew. And when you look at somebody to model your life after. My great story about Homer was they were playing for the NCCA championship game against Olivet Nazarene to go to the national tournament, probably his biggest game year after I graduated. I couldn't find him. I went into his office, and this was 20 minutes before the game. Gym was sold out. You couldn't get in. And they shut the doors. I'm looking for him. He's in his office reading a book to Scott and Bryce. And I thought, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to be. I want to be someone that's going to say, you know what, we got the biggest game of my life, but I want to be a dad first. That was that boom. That just set the tone right there. And I'm forever grateful.
Wow. It's been a great hour to spend with you guys. I appreciate you taking time to be here with us, Mike. I've told you 1,000 times I love you. Appreciate all you've done for me.
Love you too.
I need to welcome Mike into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, hey, I know. I'm joining.
It's special.
Yeah, I know.
When you're a Hoosier guy, it's special.
Yeah, it is. Truly is.
So obviously, I know both of you as great coaches, but it's far more important to me to know you as great and powerful men, and you're both like that. And this opportunity to come and hang out with you and eat a little bit and chat about hoops has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's got to do it for our program
Appreciate
here
it.
tonight. Thanks to Mike Lightfoot. And once again, found out this week that he's going to be going to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Both these guys member of the Hall of Fame, NAIA Hall of Fame. They've done so many things. We'll have all the particulars up on the screen for our video portion of our program. But once again, thanks to our coaches. A busy week of high school and college basketball coming your way here on Regional Radio Sports. Make sure you check out the links below, and we have a lot of things coming your way. So for Coach Ron Hecklinski, for Mike Lightfoot, Jim Kessler, I'm Paul Condry. Thanks again to Andrew Kirksey, as well as Tanya Condry and Tanner Kemp for the great work behind the scenes here today. Without their wonderful assistance, we don't get a chance to do these kind of cool things. Thanks to Beef Brady's. For all of us at Regional Radio Sports, I'm Paul Condry. God bless you all. Semper Fidelis. Good night, everyone.